Hi, welcome to my channel, American Teacher, 5th grade, where we learn all things that pertain to 5th grade standards. So I'm Miss America. Right now we are in the middle of studying American history and the American Revolution. So here we are in lesson 5. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, one of my favorite dates is 1776. Thomas Paine publishes Common Sense. Happened just a few months before the Declaration of Independence is issued and signed. And then right after that, in 1777, the Articles of Confederation are written. Important things to know is, how did the 13 colonies cut their ties with Britain? Let's go over our vocabulary words. First, we have independence. Let's look at it over here. It says, many began to call for independence, the freedom to govern themselves. So we kept on reading to find it. Sometimes we have to find it up above or a little bit later. Another word that we also have is resolution. So let's read that. Says, Lee then called for a resolution or a formal group statement of independence. So not just one person, but a whole group of people. A resolution. Usually when I think of resolution, I think of me making like a New Year's resolution. I resolve. And I guess it's kind of a group thing because everybody's making a New Year's resolution although each person is doing is kind of creating their own, whether it's to get more fit or to be kinder or maybe to be more self-reliant. Okay. All right. Another one would be declaration. And here it is also on this page right here. It says, it also chose a committee to write a declaration or official statement about independence to be sent to the king. So a declaration is an official statement. Other important words are preamble, that we will be reading in context later, and grievance. Important people in this lesson are Thomas Paine, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Abigail Adams, one of my heroes or heroines. Important places are Independence Hall. And again, our focus skill for this unit is cause and effect. Let's go ahead and read our You Are There. I cannot talk right now. You Are There, and that is our clue word, second person, with our two keywords being you and yours. So it says, your friend waves a pamphlet in your face. This will change the course of history. You notice that the short book's title is Common Sense. Your friend says, in here are all the reasons we should be our own country. The year is 1776, and battles between the colonists and British soldiers have already taken place. Your friend tells you common sense is going to make everyone want to be free of Britain. Isn't that fun and interesting? Here's a picture of what Thomas Paine looked like based on paintings, because they didn't have photographs back then. And it says, Thomas Paine and Common Sense. Thomas Paine argued that the colonies should claim their independence. Moving toward independence. More colonists were starting to think that their problems with Britain could not be settled. One person who helped shape the colonists' ideas was Thomas Paine. In Common Sense, Paine wrote that the colonists should rule themselves. Subheading, Congress debates independence. From Georgia to New Hampshire, people talked about Paine's ideas. Many began to call for independence, the freedom to govern themselves. Delegates at the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia also started to talk about independence. John Adams of Massachusetts argued strongly for it. He said independence was the only way for the colonists to have liberty. In time, more and more of the delegates came to agree with Adams' point of view. On June 7, 1776, Richard Henry Lee of Virginia slowly rose from his chair at the Second Continental Congress. He told the other delegates that the 13 colonies no longer owed loyalty to the king. Lee then called for a resolution or a formal group statement of independence. Here's what he says. Resolved that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. Next subheading. A declaration is written. Congress debated Lee's resolution. It also chose a committee to write a declaration or official statement about independence to be sent to the king. The committee asked Thomas Jefferson of Virginia to write, I'm in the way right here. Let me scooch that up. Let's look at this picture right here. It says Thomas Jefferson, members of Congress respected Thomas Jefferson's talents as a writer. And he was kind of what we would call a Renaissance man, and the fact that he was good at almost everything he did. So let's go ahead and start again right here. The committee asked Thomas Jefferson of Virginia to write the first draft. Jefferson was a 33-year-old lawyer who had studied government and law. He used his knowledge to explain his ideas. The other members of the committee also added ideas, but Jefferson was the main author. Every evening for about 17 days, he wrote and rewrote the draft of the Declaration of Independence. Cause and effect. What were some of the reasons why many people in the colonies called for independence? When you think of that, can you answer it in a complete sentence? Here, let's move this over this way. Let's check out the picture down here. It says, presenting the Declaration. The mural shows Thomas Jefferson handing a draft of the Declaration of Independence to John Hancock. And John Hancock, again, was one of the first ones. Over here you can see his signature, John Hancock. You might hear the expression, sign your John Hancock here, because he wrote so big. He said he didn't want King George III to have to use his spectacles or his reading glasses to read his name. Most of them, if you notice, were kind of little scribbles where they tried to make it really hard to tell who wrote that, because I didn't want to be found out, because the treason, the death by treason was one of the most horrible ways to die. And maybe I'll talk about it in a minute. But let's first get the Declaration of Independence out. Thomas Jefferson carefully planned the Declaration of Independence. In the preamble, or first part, Jefferson told why the Declaration was needed. He also explained why the colonies had the right to break away from Britain and form a new nation. Subheading, Rights and Grievances. The next part of the Declaration of Independence describes the colonists' main ideas about government. It also states that all people have certain rights that governments cannot take away. Jefferson wrote that people have the right to be free, the right to live, be free, and seek their own happiness. Doesn't mean you will be. I think happiness is more of an attitude, regardless of your circumstances, although certainly everybody likes more favorable circumstances. These words have become some of the most famous in United States history. Go. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed, provided by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So they even kind of helped you in there. So that they are endowed. An endowment is like a gift. Sometimes you might think of it like like a monetary gift, but it's a huge gift. If it's a monetary gift, it's a very large bit of money. So an endowment or provided. So sometimes like schools might receive endowments, or like a hospital where they are provided with large sums of money or endowed upon them. But in this way, it's a little bit more like, it's a little bit more of a formal word, I guess, for like a ceremonial word, if you will. The longest part of the Declaration lists the colonists' grievances or complaints against King George III and Parliament. It also lists the ways the colonists had tried to settle their differences with Britain peacefully. In the last part of the Declaration, Jefferson stated that the colonies were free and independent states. Reading check to summarize. What important ideas did Thomas Jefferson give in the Declaration of Independence? Okay, just go back, see if you can find them. The Declaration of Independence. Background. This important document includes the idea that a government gets its power from the consent of the people. You can read the full text of the Declaration on pages resource page 23 through 26, so that's quite a bit. I also have like a small pamphlet that came to me in the mail where, it's a little bit more modern day, and I will be reading it all, just not during this lesson. So I'll perhaps share both of those. So this part is the preamble. Again, Schoolhouse Rock has they've put it to music, which helps you remember it. And so I can hardly say it without singing, "We the people, in order to form a more perfect union." Anyways, they go on with a statement of rights. Right here is about where the charges against the king. Notice how large this is. And then down here are all of these. Notice the beautiful handwriting. Can you write like that? It's beautiful. And down here again are all the signers of the Declaration. There are 56 signatures. Some of them are go by states. And perhaps in another one I will share with you the names of the 56 signers. But we will go ahead and add that. All right, let's check out our picture on this page. New York City. Historical paintings give an artist's view of an event. The women, children, and Native Americans shown in this painting would not have been present at this event. So again, what we call artistry liberty. Says this statue of King George III was melted down and the metal was used to make bullets for American soldiers. So right there, they tore down that statue. Over here, a historic room. The Declaration of Independence was first presented in the assembly room of the Pennsylvania State House. And so here it is, being presented here. And let's go ahead and read about how Congress approves the Declaration. When he was finished writing, Thomas Jefferson gave his draft of the Declaration of Independence to Congress. On June 28th, it was read aloud to the delegates. They discussed it for several days and made edits. Then, on July 2nd, the delegates voted to approve. Richard Henry Lee's resolutions to cut ties with Britain, the colonies now thought of themselves as independent states. They felt they were free to make their own laws. Now that happened on July 2nd. So why do we put our fireworks on July 4th and call that? So we'll get to that maybe in a minute. We'll see if they fix that or not. A public reading. This is why. On July 4th, 1776, Congress voted to accept the Declaration's final wording. 4 days later, on July 8th, large crowds gathered outside the Pennsylvania State House, today called Independence Hall. Bells rang out, and Colonel John Nixon gave the first public reading of the Declaration of Independence. Members of the Second Continental Congress also listened as Nixon read. News of the Declaration quickly spread across the former colonies. Many people who supported independence tore down pictures and statues of King George III. They sang songs, rang bells, and fired cannons in celebration. John Adams was so pleased when he heard of these celebrations that he wrote about them in a letter to Abigail Adams, his wife. He said that Independence Day should be celebrated by succeeding generations from this time forward, and we sure do. Next subheading, a dangerous decision. By August 2nd, a copy of the Declaration was ready to be signed by the members of the Second Continental Congress. The first to sign it was John Hancock, the President of the Congress. He said that he wrote his name large enough so that King George III could read it without his glasses. The way he signed it, it became so famous that the term John Hancock now means a person's signature. Signing the Declaration was dangerous. King George III had promised to do whatever was necessary to end the rebellion. If the Americans lost the war, the British would try the signers for treason, a crime punishable by death. Benjamin Franklin joked. I don't know, I guess you have to joke or laugh in the face of death. Joked about this when it was his turn to sign the Declaration. We must all hang together, he said, or we shall all hang separately. He knew the signers had to unite against the British. And I'm just going to add, they didn't just hang you. So if you're hanging, you're being choked with a rope. And sometimes that can take a couple of minutes. And in those couple of minutes, they would also reach in with a pitchfork right into the soft part of your tummy, twist it around, pull out whatever will come out. So all of like your small intestines and all of that stuff just sounds totally painful, and then light that on fire. Like they really were just mean. I know it's treason, but so that is why we've also added into our Bill of Rights that there shall be no cruel and unusual punishment, because truly that is very, very cruel, and I've never heard of anything so bizarre. I mean, it's just mean. So, yes, your last few living breaths are saying that on there. It's like they're trying to kill you all these different ways. The Declaration's importance. When the Declaration of Independence was approved in 1776, only white men who owned property could vote. Some people believe that it was unfair. In a letter to her husband in March 1776, Abigail Adams wrote about her belief that Congress should recognize women's rights, and I love her for it. I'm so glad that we have these letters and this information. She wrote, "In the new code of law, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies." Didn't quite happen. It took 1776, 1876, almost 150 years later. Definitely more than 100, more than 125 for ladies. It would take many years for women, African Americans, Native Americans, and other groups of Americans to share fully in the promise of the Declaration of Independence. However, the Declaration has inspired people around the world to work for freedom and equal rights. I will say, if flattery is imitation, then The Declaration of Independence has been recreated for new constitutions all over the world. It's really phenomenal. Cause and effect in our reading check. Why were the delegates worried about signing the Declaration of Independence? Well, hopefully now that I've described that terrible way, you can understand a little bit more why they would be worried. Not just for them, but also for their families. Many of them had several children, large farms. Life was hard then. Here we go. Here's a picture of John Dickinson. It says helped with the Articles of Confederation. So this reads Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union between the states. So they're like, this is how we're all going to get along. Here's our new heading, forming a new government. The Second Continental Congress set up another committee to plan how to unite the 13 states. John Dickinson was chosen to head the committee. It decided that each state would govern itself, but all would work together on national issues. This first plan of government for the United States was called the Articles of Confederation. It was a big change from being governed by a king. Here we are, subheading the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation were approved by Congress in 1777 and later by the states. Under the Articles, each state elected representatives to serve in a national legislature. It was called the Confederation Congress. Each state, whether large or small, had one vote in Congress, just one. Until 1789, this Congress made laws for the new nation. It helped keep the states together during the Revolutionary War. However, the Articles had weaknesses that caused problems for the new government. Subheading, Weaknesses of the Articles. Americans were fighting a war to win their independence. They feared that a strong national or central government might threaten their freedom. As a result, the Articles of Confederation left most power with the states. Before Congress could pass any law, representatives from at least 9 of the 13 states had to approve it. However, the representatives rarely agreed. No state wanted to be under the control of the other states. Even if the representatives approved a law, Congress did not have the power to enforce it. That's a big deal. You've got to be able to back up what you mean. The Articles limited the powers of the national government in other ways too. For example, Congress had the power to declare war, make treaties, and borrow money. However, it could not control trade or collect taxes. To cover expenses such as debts from the war, Congress could only ask the states for money. It could not force the states to pay. The Articles also made Congress depend on the states for the nation's defense. Congress could ask for an army, but the states had to provide the soldiers. Reading check, Cause and Effect. Why were the new states afraid of a strong national government? You answer that in a complete sentence. To read our summary. Partly because of Thomas Paine's common sense, many colonists began to call for independence. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. Later, Congress passed the Articles of Confederation, the country's first plan of government. And there they are. It says 1 shilling, some things. Early money. Most states printed their own money. This money might not be acceptable in other states. So that would be a problem. Here we go. Review for this lesson. How did the 13 colonies cut their ties with Britain? 2. Vocabulary. Use the words preamble and grievance in a sentence about the Declaration of Independence. 3. Civics and government. What are some of the ideas described in the Declaration of Independence? 4. Critical thinking. Make it relevant. How do the ideas in the Declaration of Independence affect your life? That's really something to think about. I hope you do pause and reflect on that. 5. Write a persuasion letter. Imagine it is 1776. Write a letter to the local newspaper. Tell why you do or do not support independence for the 13 colonies. Include evidence that supports your argument. So hopefully it's something that at least I've mentioned, if not something else that you've heard. Please reflect on where you got your source for your opinion on why you feel that way. Cause and effect. On a separate sheet of paper, copy and complete the graphic organizer below. Again, because many colonists read common sense, the effect was what? And under here beneath my name it says, the effect, Thomas Jefferson writes the Declaration of Independence because why? 1 or 2 more pages, we're almost done. I know, I'm feeling it too, but all right, here we go. Identifying multiple causes and effects. I feel like this is a super great reading strategy. So if you can stick with me for just a few more minutes, it's really fabulous to know this. Why it matters. To understand why things happen, it is important to identify multiple causes and effects. Learn. Sometimes events in history have more than one cause and more than one effect. A cause is an event or an action that makes something happen. An effect is what happens as a result of that event or action. You can use these steps to help you identify the triple causes and their effect. To help you identify multiple causes and their effects. Step 1. Look for the effects. Decide whether there is more than one effect. Step 2. Look for the causes of the effects. Step 3. Think about the connections between the causes and their effects. An effect of one event can become the cause of another event. And down below in this picture it says the Battle of Lexington. What were some effects of the event shown here? Well, everything that kind of came after that are all a bunch of effects. But let's go ahead and check out this one where it says multiple causes and effects. So this one has 2 causes. Because Britain needed to pay for the French and Indian War, and because Britain sent more troops to the colonies, the effect was Parliament passed new laws such as the Sugar Act and the Stamp Act and the Tea Act. So taxes help pay for our military. They even help pay for many teachers, although to be honest, I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm just donating my summer hours because I feel strongly about what I do. And so, sometimes, it'll pay for our roads and those kinds of things. Another one, so this one is a single cause that had 2 different effects. It says Parliament passed new laws such as the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, and the Tea Act. So technically, we should also kind of have an arrow going from there to there. So because that's the same. And then because that happened, it says colonists boycotted British goods. Remember that? And also the Boston Tea Party took place. Do you know anybody who's ever boycotted anything or done something? And then over here, again, we have these. I feel like we should also have an arrow down to here. Because the colonists boycotted British goods and because the Boston Tea Party took place, the effect was Parliament passed the Coercive Acts and the battles of Lexington and Concord were fought. And then again, we should also probably have an arrow going this way. And it says Parliament passed the Coercive Acts and the battles of Lexington and Concord were fought. And the effect was the 13 colonies decided or the 13 colonies declared independence from Britain. And aren't we so glad that they did? Even if you were to live in Britain. Practice. The chart above lists many of the causes and effects of British actions toward the colonies. Use the chart to answer these questions. Number 1. What caused new taxes such as the Stamp Act to be passed? So here's the Stamp Act, and what caused that? The British need to pay for the French and Indian War, and they even sent more troops over, so lots of troops to pay for. Number 2, what were the effects of new tax laws being passed? So because these new tax laws, such as the Sugar Act, were passed, the effect was, again, colonists boycotted in that one. And number 3, what effect did the coercive acts and the battles of Lexington and Concord apply? So let's see. Because Parliament passed the coercive acts and the battles of Lexington and Concord were fought, the effect was the 13 colonies declared independence from Britain. That is huge. Can we apply this into our lives today? Right down here it says, review this chapter. Find at least one multiple cause and effect relationship other than those shown in the chart, then share your finding with the screen. And again, I would just encourage you to have your students kind of, again, make sort of their own little flip chart. And I would have 5 to 7 that they have on it, and then have them draw pictures underneath. I love doing that. That was so much fun. All right, we are ready for a review. So chapter 8, we're all done. Woohoo! Thank you so much for sticking with me. I hope you really feel your self-discipline improving, your self-reliance improving, your self-respect improving. I hope you feel better about yourselves because you do this. I hope you feel better about others and can have a little bit more respect for others, even if you disagree with them. Just always know and think that I believe in you, and I know you are going to do amazing things, and have an amazing day. Remember, most of it's all up here. Thanks. Talk to you later.